He's going in. Joko's trying to get it. Joko's in. Joko's out. And Splice walk away empty-handed. It's coming in. G2 going to give it just a little more to close this one out, but it's clean. It's concise. G2 making sure to assert their dominance.
This is the goal.
Cervix, he's on the tower. Why are you so far forward? First blood to Nuclear. Well, luckily, Jacob finds a fix. Oh, goodbye. Memento leaps forward. Flash and heal. Exhaust. Plus the enchanted crystal arrow. Reckless down to 100. The sapling scores for Blackfish.
This is really well played by Giant.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the EU LCS studios here in Berlin for our coverage of Week 3 of the Spring Split. We'll be bringing you two best-of-3s tonight, and if they're anything like the split so far, they're absolutely sure to be explosive. Earlier today, we saw Vitality and H2K setting up on stage for their showdown in our first matchup. Going to be an exciting one for sure. You can see Odo, as always, talk to the coach. New coach coming in on the side of Vitality as well. Hello, I'm Daniel Dracos, and joining me at this cheeky analyst desk tonight are James Stress O'Leary, Misfits' own Barney Alfari Morris, and Coach Hussein Dako Moosby. Welcome, gentlemen. It's the first time we've had you here.
Thank you for having us.
Good overall. Excited.
Not the first time for me. But
not the first time for you. It's good to have you back.
Lots
you
of
know,
games.
always excited to have you here as well, Stress. I don't want to disinclude you from the action. Of course, here's how the standings look on day 2 of Week 3 of the split after our 2 matches yesterday.
Yeah, and you know, yesterday we saw Unicorns of Love continue their streak 4-0. Not a lot of people would have thought that coming into the split, but they have been the strongest team over in Group B, and you can't take it away from them.
And as good as Unicorns have looked, of course, Misfits, you guys had a fantastic moment yesterday, coming out on top over Fnatic. Technically tied for first as of right now, but of course, G2 will play a series later today to see if you guys can maintain that tie.
That might change.
It may change a little bit, but talk to me a little bit more about the series that we saw yesterday between you guys and Fnatic, because I'll be honest, we didn't expect you guys, or I don't want to speak for everyone on the broadcast. I didn't expect you guys to do so well, but that was clean, that was confident, that looked fantastic.
I think a couple of things played into our favor for the matchup. One, I think over the past 3 weeks, we've been improving a lot on our vision and just our mid to late game decision making in terms of engages and just how we control the map. So I think we showed that yesterday. And then along with that, I think we got a bit lucky with the picks that we ended up getting and the picks that Fnatic brought to the game.
And I want to stop on one of those picks. Alfari, we had a discussion earlier in the week. What is it that allows Jace to be such a force in the top lane? Is it Courage of Colossus, lethality, everything mixed together?
Well, on the new patch, which we played versus Fnatic on, Coach of the Colossus obviously got nerfed, and tanks are typically good picks into Jace. So Jace is obviously like a really strong flex pick as well. So I think these changes made Jace like even stronger as a top laner, also as a mid laner, just as a pick in general, which is why it's a really strong pick now, I think.
Of course, though, it also felt a little bit like we saw some kind of fumbles on the Fnatic side. Did you feel like they were playing at their full strength there? What do you think was the big kind of vulnerability on their end?
I think we're surprised that they put so much on Caps, so much pressure on Caps to perform, because he is the newest member on the roster and he's very much a rookie to how to play the game. And then they went twice into a 1-3-1 comp, so that itself seemed a little bit weird to me. And then along with that, I think our vision was really good. So they didn't play properly to the vision they had of the map, but it was also difficult for them to find play since the map was so dark for them so often.
And especially with those vision improvements you were talking about, I mean, so as an amazing with the culprits that just time after time ended up getting caught out, especially in Game 2. I
mean, hard for us to watch, hard for Fnatic fans to watch, but of course you guys had to have felt pretty good about it overall.
We're not complaining.
Yeah. Definitely some highlight moments coming out on 2. The Ivern continues to be this absolute powerhouse in Europe, and I got to say, like, across the board, it feels like Misfits are playing much cleaner. We saw improved Baron setups, and you attributed, you kind of said the team has been steadily improving, but it really did, I think, from our perspective, feel like a massive change between Week 2 and Week 3. Did you guys feel that as well, or is this kind of the pace that you've been on the whole time?
I think we felt the biggest change between the Roccat game last week to the G2 one. Even though the G2 was a loss, I think we put up a pretty good fight. And I think our vision in the G2 series was fairly good. It's a lot better this week, but it's something we talked about for a whole week, all the way back from Roccat. So we've been improving on it for like 7 to 8 days now, and I think that's what ended up showing yesterday.
Yeah, well, speaking of G2, we will, of course, see them play in our second series today as we bring up today's schedule. Of course, 2 more matches is going to be exciting. First up, though, not going to be G2. It will be Vitality versus H2K before we see Giants and G2 Esports clash later in the day. And honestly, guys, I just want to focus right in on this first series. Vitality versus H2K. Both show some good things, some bad things. H2K looking a little down and out since their Unicorn series. But let's start with Vitality.
Sure.
What do we expect from this team coming in this week?
They're somewhat in recovery mode. In the early weeks, we saw some bad drafts. And even in the beginning of week 2, just really crazy things that they were giving away and not getting for themselves. Slightly better against Origin, I feel. And they're in this mode where the team seems to be slowly improving, but there are still a lot of isolated mistakes. I mean, we were talking earlier about Hachani. We were talking a bit about how Joko is settling in. So, Alfari, what do you think is one of the biggest things for Vitality right now that they're struggling with?
Well, I think Hachani, obviously Hachani's been mispositioning a lot, particularly in the mid and late game. And Vitality overall, they've looked not very great. Like, when they have early leads, like particularly versus Origin, for example, like Wisdom was 0-5, and then they still managed to make this game close somehow, which should be like kind of impossible, especially versus Origin, you would think. But Vitality have just struggled a lot, like particularly mid and late game. The early game is like maybe like only redeemable quality at the moment, looking at their games. So I guess they're going to have to like get a really big early lead to be able to challenge H2K.
And yeah, well, I feel like we've expected more out of that bottom lane coming in. One of the big things that stands out to me is jungle. Joko doesn't seem to be quite on the same page of his team consistently. He's had some great games. He's had, honestly, some terrible games as well. And Hussein, I wanted to kind of, what is your opinion of this guy as a player, as a jungler, and how do you think he's going to stack up in this matchup?
Well, I think he's new to the current setup of the jungle role. He's going up against really good junglers in Europe this season. And along with that, he has the support in Hachani, and they don't seem to be working on the same page quite often. So maybe it's a language issue, maybe it's just game knowledge, I'm not sure. But I think that's causing a lot of issues for Vitality as a whole because they're not able to use their laners and support and jungle quite in sync quite often.
All right. Well, I mean, definitely some issues on that side. Of course, some strong points as well as Vitality were able to find wins. But I want to turn our attention now to the side of H2K. Looking at their team, I mean, it feels like it was so good up until that Unicorn series, and now is really the first time when we look at H2K that we have to start calling out clear issues. But what was it for you, Stress, that stood out the most?
For me, it was a mix of things. We saw them later on into the game in the team fights, not only struggle with target selection, but kind of being all over the place. And against Unicorns, a team that was so good at team fighting in week 2 when we looked at it, it just got exploited time after time. And H2K couldn't really get on the right foot from the games. And I'm just not used to seeing H2K look quite so rough. Despite only being now in week 3, H2K over the months have just seemed so consistent.
And I'm curious for your opinion, gentlemen. Would you chalk this up to Unicorns of Love just being very, very good right now, or are there kind of more weaknesses being shown through for H2K?
So I think H2K gave UOL like UOL's best comp, which is like Shen, Katarina, this kind of thing. But like this is actually obviously like a very strong Shen player, and UOL never hesitate to go for fights. And they played the team fights very well, UOL. I don't think it's like necessarily H2K playing like really badly. Like they didn't play great, they played okay. And UOL just like, they had a lot of practice with this comp, they played very well with it, and they looked better.
Yeah, it was good to see. Of course,
I think overall, just Unicorns is probably the best team fighting team in the league. So it's one thing that they are able to exploit this weakness in H2K. But despite that, I think H2K still has a good macro sense. They still have Yankos, who's really, really good in the jungle. Febiven, who's been in LCS for a while now, and he knows how to play mid lane very well. So I think while that weakness was exploited by UOL, I'm not necessarily sure that's a big concern against other teams.
Well, of course, gentlemen, we will find out. I've just heard that the casters are ready, so we've talked about it. Let's hear what the teams have to say. Let's see what the teams can show us, and let's get over to that caster desk to get this game started.